It's high noon.
Everybody, and welcome to episode number 9 of Foul Play. That's Fantasy Overwatch League Play. If this is the first time you are joining us, I am joined, as always, by Asmith. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I am good considering the circumstances.
Considering the week you've had, I can understand. And we're going to make that week just a little bit worse by making you introduce our second host here, who's also joining us. So can you give a little bit of a proper bet-losing welcome here to Mr. Blevins?
I would love to introduce to everyone, Lord TheBlevins.
Thank you, my squire. I am here, and I am happy.
And the fact that you spoke over the fanfare of trumpets that I was playing at the time was honestly perfect.
That's exactly how I planned it, even though I can't hear it.
very well done. So yes, if you are just, if you missed last week or anything like that, we do have our betting system in place, how we're going to properly punish one another for losing bets to each other. They'll be intermittent and random.
Now?
What do you want to address?
Can I address the reason I lost this bet? Gamsu left the country. Left the country. He heard we made this bet, and he was like, "That's it, peace, I'm gone, leaving the country. Kalios, you can have my spot." What is this mess? Get out of here.
I also picked xQcya as a sleeper last week, but you won't hear me making any excuses about it.
You also don't have to say Lord TheBlevins. So.
It's true. It's true. It's a slightly different set of circumstances, no doubt. But you got what you signed up for. So let's move along into the show and talk about, as always, how we did this past week. And of course, we are referring to how our fantasy matchups for the week went. So, Asmith, talk to us. How'd you do this week, bud?
Outside of our official leagues, I did really, really well.
Since those don't count, how'd you do it?
Those don't count. I went 0-2, and I lost by Lord TheBlevins himself by 17 points. Now, look, on the defensive here, that bug, it smashed us up. Look, I had Sleepy left to play, and we're completely disregarding the fact that he had Sabiolby left to play. We're just disregarding that. I'm just saying, no. In the other league, I did have, I had a couple people that, if anybody doesn't know, there was a bug that 3 of the 4 maps between San Francisco Shock and New York Excel are not included.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, a very, very unfortunate bug. There was an issue with the spectator client that affected whether or not they were able to record the stats for that particular matchup. And as you can hear very, very plainly, and that's going to come up again when I talk about how I did this week, it is left a little bit of a salty feeling on some of our tongues here following these matchups. But Blevins, I don't sense any salt from you this week. So how'd you do this past week?
Okay, you got it. Okay, so imagine me, the resident NYXL fan, who of course picks with his heart and has so many NYXL fans across my team. I won in both expert leagues again. I'm still on top of both expert leagues, and not only that, I was number 1 overall in points in the whole league for one of the leagues. In the other league, I was number 2 with the. Actually, I probably would have remained number 2 even if the bug wasn't there, but. Yeah, no, I'm still crushing in those leagues. I'm untouchable. I won the Lord bet here, and I also won a bet with Tucker Roberts, the president of Philadelphia Fusion, in an NY versus Philly match. So I'm all. It's all good over here for.
All right, well, enough of that, since nobody wants to hear about people having good weeks.
Tucker Roberts bet.
Well, so I just bet him if Philly beats NY, I'll buy and wear a Philadelphia Fusion hat for 2 weeks, and I'll also start a Philadelphia Fusion fan show. And if New York beats Philly, then I get a sweet pair of Philadelphia Fusion shoes. So once those come in, I'll be wearing them, and I'll be putting them on stream. So
Nice.
it's everything's good in the kingdom of Lord Belvins.
All right, well, let's stop talking about that because, again, like I said, nobody wants to hear about people having a good time in fantasy.
You'll be, it's okay. You'll be hearing it on all of the shows.
So we've got the bad end of the spectrum, we've got the good end of the spectrum, and here I am right in the middle. I went 1-1 in my 2 expert leagues. I was able to defeat the evil Invictus. I don't know why he's the evil Invictus, other than it sounds good. Yeah, it sounds good with the name, so I'm rolling with it. You're evil now, bud. Sorry, but I took him down in the 1 expert league in the old scoring format this week, and then I lost to the Monkey Prince. That is right underneath the Lord Belvins. But yeah, I lost to him by 16 points, and I sure did have Mecco, so that bug was a little rough. To be fair,
that actually is pretty bad.
To be fair, he had Baby Bay, so it's certainly possible it didn't go my way, but boy, was that sure a stomping. Like, I can't imagine Baby Bay had a really, really productive outing coming out of that match, but we will never know. And that will wrap up the how we did this past week section. Now, moving on here, one thing we want to talk about happened right before we started recording here, but XQC has been officially released by the Dallas FOWL. So I know I picked him as a sleeper this past week. I owned him on a fair few leagues, but obviously we couldn't have necessarily anticipated the suspension that came through, at least not it happening on the spot. When we recorded last week, there was no indication that he would be a danger to not play in both of the matches. He did see a little bit of time in the first matchup, but only like, I think, 2 of 4 maps, and rough week for the Dallas FOWL on the overall. Not getting any better for them after the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. Getting significantly better for them after the release of xQc. Sometimes the only thing you can do with a cancerous tumor is to cut it out and move on. And so that is what they're going for.
Here's the question, though, Death.
Sure.
Does xQc talk become the new or synonymous with DeFran talk?
Well, you just lost 5 points as far as I'm concerned, so 100%. After we discuss the release, he's getting the DeFran treatment as far as I'm concerned, until he heads back into the Overwatch League.
The McFran treatment.
Around the payload can only benefit by having additional booby traps for the panels.
Yes. The Hex will randomly spring on guests unknowingly.
Yeah, he will just like back them straight into them and not know they're there. It'll be phenomenal. But I guess the question that I want to ask you guys here is, what does this do to Taimu's value in particular? Now, he's in a weird spot because he's still listed as a DPS player, and shout outs Winston's Lab. You changed Kareev in the middle of a week. What's going on here? We know Taimu's a tank. Let's go ahead and move him. So I think it's very clear he's going to get some initial boost in value as their starting tank until it's OGE, right?
Yep.
Until OGE gets here and kind of takes over. And I think we all anticipate that to be his job going forward. But what are you guys doing with Taimu over the next couple of weeks? Asmith, let's start with you.
I'm just look with Taimu. First off, I don't think he's good enough tank to give you the value, even if his scoring was on tank. But right now, Winston Lab has not changed it, and I'm not even touching him because I think he put up 6 maps he played. He put up 32 points. Because
assuming they change him, would you play him?
I mean, assuming they change him, I still wouldn't play him. I think there are better tanks, and I don't think his tanking is up to the tanking of everybody else. And I think he will get better, but I don't think he's going to be a viable option by the time when OGE gets here. I think OGE is going to take it over.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. Why not?
They're in a weird spot, and I'd honestly almost like to see them just commit very hard to the Rascal effect lineup on DPS and roll with Taimu, since we know his Winston's good and we know his Roadhog's good. So they'll just couple like random maps on Nepal and stuff like that where you might want to run the Roadhog and the Orisa combo. They can use Mickey to play the Orisa. So I see a little bit of a path forward here where Dallas can be okay, but unfortunately it's just not going to help with their overall problems of communication. Blevins, anything to add to this conversation here before we move on?
I don't want anything to do with Taimu. You might get 1 or 2 weeks out of him, depending on when OGE comes in. And even if so, like, he might not play, or he might not, like, he's averaging 33 points across the last 3 weeks. Like, that is his weekly average from week 6, 7, and 8. You don't want that. Even if he does play, even if they switch him to tank, like, what are you getting out of that? What, like, that you couldn't get from basically anyone else in the league? The best case scenario is that you pick him up this week when people like me, who picked him way too early, like, want to just get something out of him. You play him for a week. Winston's Lab changes him over. He plays all the maps. You get some points out of him, and then you dump him off way too high to someone who's not paying attention to, like, what's probably going to happen to Tymo in the future. But I would not want to take that line if I were you. That's like the best case scenario for him.
There's too many other people.
You know, honestly, there was a bit of an issue, obviously, you know, and I was talking last week about how I think Mistakes is a really solid pickup here, where we might be seeing a Sombra meta going forward. Now we've seen Mistakes come in a little bit again this past week. And the reason I'm bringing up Boston is partially to segue into the next topic I want to talk about, but also because I specifically was like dropping Taimu in like 3 different spots to get Mistakes on my lineup. And now I've released Taimu. If you're in leagues with me, go check, because I probably just did that. But yeah, so I've been like cutting Taimu to make room for other people, and I'm not even mad about it. I don't plan to go get him back. This is like a not completely non-issue for me. He can sit in the unsigned players as far as I'm concerned. But
unless you have, like, I would maybe trade xQcya for Taimu. And that's only a maybe.
I will say, though, if you're having really bad tank issues right now, and you might want to go to somebody that can, you know, just give you a slight boost or be playable for 1 week, if they do change his scoring. I mean, listen, I had leagues where I had Fissure before he was traded. Like, you know what I mean? Like, him and Note were my 2 tanks.
Someone who you think is going to be a 0, then sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was going to be rough. So there's definitely 10-man league players out there that are really struggling to get any positivity from tanks. That's the only spot where you want to be trying to use him. And maybe you can send a really low ball trade offer right now to go get him, just to give yourself something for a couple weeks. It's definitely a tough spot, and unless you're really, really desperate, I wouldn't worry about it. But I want to talk a little bit about these Boston issues we're having. Not because we know for sure anything drastic is going to happen, but there was a report by Slasher from ESPN who went as far as to say that there is a very strong internal divide in the middle of the Boston Uprising right now, where the head coach and Gamzu are on one side of things, kind of wanting to stay the course and continue the progress that we saw from them in week 1 with their largely Korean roster. And then the report says that Huck basically, you know, I don't think he says specifically, but it would make the most sense that Huck and not the 2 Korean guys would be the one that would want to transition into an all-Western style team, kind of in the vein of what Houston did, whether it was deliberate or not. They don't have any Korean players right now. And again, Slasher went on to say that they're shopping Neko and Striker and Gamzu and like their Korean talents. Are you guys giving this any credence, or are you doing anything to react? Because I seem a little bit smarter telling everybody to go get Mistakes, because if it turns out that Striker gets traded, Mistakes is the obvious choice to step in for him. Are you guys reacting to this at all as fantasy owners, even just stashing things on your bench just in case? Asmith.
No, I don't think there's anything they're going to do in a short time period. I think Gamsu might be the only person that's at a loss for his playtime. I think they're going to do this maybe season 2, if they're going to make any drastic changes. There's no need. Striker's too good. Neko's too good right now. Like, those are 2 of their best players on their team. Striker and Neko, I would say, probably are the best 2 players right now on their team. Kalios is up there too. So all of their Korean players are shockingly better than all of their non-Korean players right now.
Cut to Dreamcasper going, whoa, what? Huh?
I mean, he hasn't performed lately. Like, since stage 2,
Okay.
Dreamcasper is rough. So I really don't think they're gonna do anything. I think if you have Gamsu, maybe prepare, because I could see Kalios taking Gamsu's spot permanently. Because if it seems like Gamsu was the root of this issue, now you do have Huck. He actually posted a Medium on Medium.com, like a reply saying that they're not actively trying to shop anybody right now, and you know that nobody's close to being for sale or anything like that. So he's kind of refuting it, but you know, we know how this stuff goes. Somebody refutes something,
Right.
and then the next
Turns
week
out it was
he's
true.
gone. Yeah, but
Right, because if he's
it just-
trying to sell them, he would
Yeah.
definitely hurt. Like, it would definitely help his negotiating power to have a statement out there in public saying, "No, I'm not looking to trade these guys. Like, they're not at bargain basement prices or anything like that." So,
Right, they're not
Yeah.
looking to leave.
yeah,
There's no
definitely,
inner turmoil.
definitely
Yeah,
something to consider. But Blevins, are you giving this any credence, or are you reacting to this at all? Because it's obvious, you know, despite the 4-0 win over the Shanghai Dragons this week, that this is not the Boston Uprising team that we saw in stage one. Got 4-0'd by the London Spitfire, a team they were able to beat in the first round. So if there's smoke, is there fire? And what are you doing about this, Blevins?
Right. So the only thing I'm really doing is like I'm trying to shop around and pick up low. Like I would try to trade maybe for a striker or a Neko or a Gamsu potentially, because like either like they're not doing well right now, so like you want to buy when they're low, right? They've never been this low except for like the first week, the Boston players, that is. So like now is the time to buy and to trade for. Maybe I doubt people are dropping, because like if you, depending on when you made your league, like striker is definitely a big part of your team. But like if you can get a striker, or a Gamsu or even a Dream Casper for like a really low cost for you in your team, even if you don't play him, stash him. Like it seems that either Boston's gonna bounce back like they did in stage one, and maybe they won't be as good as they were in stage one, but like I mean, I remember from listening to you guys talk about the stage one recap, like how many players on Boston were the leaders of the entire stage. It was a lot. Striker and Carpe were in the top 5 for sure. Obviously Carpe's on Philly, but if you can get Striker at as low as he's probably ever going to be, he'll either bounce back on Boston, or maybe he does get shopped around and he'll be a star on whatever team he plays. So that's as much as I'm doing. I'm not panicking necessarily if I have him on a team. I'm not trying to shop him away if I have him on a team, but if someone is looking to shop him, I'm probably buying it.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense. You want to buy low and sell high, as you said, and that is, you know, probably a very good time to do it, because I don't think anybody's going to trade for a player like Striker to stick him on the bench. If somebody's going to trade for him, it's going to be, you know, a Houston, or I'm blanking. I know there's one other team out there that could use a trade. Oh, Florida. You know, potentially, say a player obviously can play it a bit, but you know, I don't think we're going to see somebody make a move on a player of Striker's caliber and at the price tag that he's sure to demand in order to just not use him. So I agree with you. No matter where he goes, there might be a downturn of a week or two while he gets reacclimated or something like that, but I expect he would have a lot of value. But let's move this conversation along here and start to talk about the leaders and the feeders from week 3 of stage 2 of the Overwatch League. Bit of a crazy week, you know. Blevins, on the flagship, we were talking about this as like the week of easy pick'ems, right? And I think I've got fewer right this week than most weeks. Just like stage 1, the one where we thought we had it all figured out is the one where everything got set on fire. So that means there's going to be some surprise players here that we're going to be talking about, especially in the leaders section. So let's lead things off on the tank spot. I'll take the first one here because, well, I mean, I've been talking about this guy. I've been picking him against all common sense in the sleeper section for a little while now. Fissure, the number 1 tank overall here for all of Fantasy Overwatch this week with 252 points. He was the number 3 overall scorer on the week. This guy is the real deal. He has made leaps and bounds improvements to the Los Angeles Gladiators. He is not going to be sitting out even a map, maybe against Shanghai, maybe, but they got some work to do in LA if they want to be considered a playoff team. We all think they're capable of it talent-wise, but they need to catch up because they did have a bit of a rough stage 1. But let's go ahead and move on here. Now, one of you guys picked Kalios, and it might have been the one that has to be referred to by a royalty title here this week. So, Blevins, why don't you talk about yours and then throw to your peasant Asmith here afterwards?
Yeah. I mean, we've got Kalios here, 198 points, number 4 overall tank. Granted, this was a 4-0-0-4 week for Boston, right? They 4-0'd Shanghai, got 0-4'd by London. I mean, I called it, man, because Kalios is in. I mean, granted, okay, maybe Gamsu was sick, etc., but I don't know. It seems like, what's that?
He fled the country.
Right, he
literally left the country.
Yeah, would rather not be in Overwatch League than play for Boston, apparently. But, you know, they lost handily to London, but they got the points against was it Shanghai that they played? I'm looking at the schedule. Yeah, against Shanghai. They got the points against Shanghai, which we've seen not happen before, right? Like we've seen teams like in 4-0s not necessarily get a ton of points, and then also not necessarily get a ton of points when they get 0 forward. So we saw him actually get some points here, and like
80 points in an 0-4 beatdown, I think is impressive.
It's very impressive. And the last thing I'll say about him is like, even if Gamsu, like there's no inner turmoil, like let's just say that Huck, we believe Huck, he was sick or whatever, like, does it matter? Like just because the person was out for a legitimate reason doesn't mean they can't lose their starting spot. Like if Kalios is doing better and Boston looks better with Kalios, play Kalios instead.
Yeah, it's like a misnomer in football that you can't lose your job just to injury, but like the injury can give the backup the door to start playing and then outperform you, and there's a non-zero chance that it's going to be viewed that way given the struggles. But
right, there's going to be some reacclimation and some like, well, we're jiving right now with Kalios and Kalios's play style, so like, yeah, Gamsu, no hard feelings, man, but like we're going to keep running this until it stops working.
Yeah.
I mean, has it really started working, to be honest?
No, but from a fantasy perspective, it's quite good. I mean, I don't think many were picking them. I mean, they won the match they were supposed to in the fashion they were supposed to, and they lost the match they were supposed to, perhaps a little more convincingly than they would have imagined, but not really any upsets or anything that was out of the ordinary here for Boston.
The one thing I will say is if you're going to ask a question of your Lord, you should probably include his style in there. But Asmith, who is the third leader at tank for the week?
All right, third leader of the tank this week is somebody that we've never seen here, and I highly doubt we'll see again. But it is the man himself, the Genji god. Oh, did I say Genji? He's a tank. That's right. Swoosh. He put up 180 points. Now, part of the reason he put up 180 points and was the number 6 overall tank was because they played 10 maps. 10 maps. They took both Texas teams to 5. And let's just put this on the record. This is his highest point total all season. He has not scored over 158 is his next highest point total for the whole season. He has never scored this much. I don't expect them to all of a sudden start doing this on the regular. This seems like an anomaly, but dude, congratulations to Swoosh. 180 points is great. They put up 100. He put up over 100 points against Dallas, which, as much as I hate it, I mean, look, they did really, really good, and you got to congratulate the man while he's here. You know, until awesome guy comes and takes his spot, you really have to give the guy a pat on the back and give him his beef jerky.
And listen, I mean, his last. What is this? His last four, right? 180, 125, 133, 158. So a 125 low, I can't say that about Gamzu when he was playing. I can't say it about Mickey. I can't say it about Envy. I can't say it about Mecco. Like there's a lot of, this is a consistency I think we're seeing with Swoosh at the moment. And like you said, listen, he's probably like at the top of the list of people that are going to come out. So I don't know how to react to this, especially when you look at their matchups. I think this week is particularly, messing with LA after messing with Texas. Could be a bit of a rough go, but something to really keep an eye on here. It's possible he carries a little bit of value into the next couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I'll say is that we've seen him on other roles before. So, like, yes, maybe he loses his tank position, but he could be more like a Pine, where maybe they just put him on a DPS role where he's only playing a certain role on certain maps, and maybe he sees less play time, but maybe he sees it in a different role. So he may still have value. He's also the type of player that, depending on the texture of your league, could be still a free agent. So if you looking to invest, maybe.
That's totally possible. Like we said, he was a really good Genji when he was with Movie Star Writers, way back in the day. Now it feels like, but we also have to think he probably hasn't played Genji competitively since then. Since he got moved to tank, he's probably been grinding tank like crazy. So I don't expect his Genji to be up to par what it was when he was with Movie Star Writers. So that's just something to think about there. So I don't know if he'll just instantly bounce back and be better at Tvik than in Genji.
And for what it's worth, I really hope they find a way to use him, because not many things in Overwatch League put a bigger smile on my face than Swoosh showing up on camera or walking out onto the stage. The dude is just he's funny to me. I just really like him as a person. I hope he finds a way to stick around and contribute to the team. Unfortunately, we have to sit down and analyze how he's playing a little bit too. But let's move the conversation to discuss the supports. Again, I'm going to take this first one just because I want to give this guy a real shout out here, because this is in the midst of some turmoil here for the Houston Outlaws, and he's been their rock through all of it. Raucus with a really, really strong performance this week. A phenomenal performance. Yeah, a rock, if you will. 263 points to give him the #1 overall support spot here, and that is good for #2 overall across all Overwatch League players in fantasy this week. So a really phenomenal performance from Raucus. I think, we've been talking about this guy as more of a lower end starting caliber support player, but the way things are shaping up for this team right now, and the way the DPS is struggling a little bit, not finishing as many kills as they were last stage, that's left them there still alive for Raucus to click their heads. So he's really stepped up for this team, and he's maintained a high level of performance, and he's no longer having to stand out through his healing done and damage done stats that had him in the top 3 to 5 in the league across all of those stats that just fantasy doesn't get to care about, because we don't have access to all those stats yet. So big shout outs to him, really doing a great job. But man, I want to talk about 2 of these, but Blevins, or Asmith, why don't you take the next one here, and then you can throw it right to Blevins for the third.
Look, I'll take the next one here. The Shaz. We've been talking about this guy for a while, and it's something. He's been really putting up a lot of points. He put up 235 fantasy points, and that was only him playing in 8 maps, not in any additional maps. Nothing went to 5, and he's really day in, day out been showing up. Overall, his lowest scoring was the very first week we started doing stats. Week 2 was 158. Other than that, he's been putting up he's probably been averaging about 200 points or so, and he's just doing a phenomenal job. I think I know statistically he is a top 5 support right now. And he is a must start in every situation. Shaz, even when their team gets stomped, Shaz is doing well. He tends to continuously get picks and more essentially first picks, which account for more in this league. So Shaz is just a phenomenal player, and with that, I don't even think it's going to be a surprise anymore that he's a leader. I don't think we can be surprised anymore that he's top of this list.
We've been talking about him and Big Goose as a combo, just working phenomenally together. We've talked about them being underrated and just maybe not on the highest performing team to really let that shine through. But with the turnaround of the Gladiators, I think we're really starting to see it. So I think that's a really good call.
They're easily the best supports that are not Korean. Just saying. I think I can't think of anybody that's better. I think Raucus may give you a chance. I was going to say,
the one I would put in the convo
I would
is
pick Shaz over Raucus. That's just my 2 cents.
And as a huge Outlaws fan, it's debatable, but I tend to agree with you. Even going into the league, everything like Shaz has been a rock.
Yeah, yep. And so I'll kick it off to Lord TheBlevins.
Yes, last one here, and we'll continue this trend here for this week. We've got Zupe from the Florida Mayhem. I mean, 10 maps is gonna do you well here. Had 198 points. 198 points is the #4 overall support. Weirdly, Kalios also had 198 points, and that put him at #4 for tank. So that's kind of a weird coincidence. But yeah, I mean, this is a season high for him. I mean, he's actually, considering how poorly the Mayhem have done, he's really not been too bad. He's just not been super great. He's really never had under 120 points. The last few weeks he's been in the 150 range and 170, 160. Yeah, he's been pretty good. So he actually didn't do that much better than he normally would have. And really, he's probably about, in terms of map points per map, he's probably, after those 120 weeks, about where he was. He played an extra couple of maps, got him a couple extra points. So, I mean, he definitely did better overall because of the 5 maps. Obviously, winning one. But the difference between winning and losing in 5 maps was literally just 10 points. He had 94 points in the loss versus Houston and 104 points in the win versus Dallas. So really, like, he's just getting 20 points per map. Doesn't matter, like, win, loss, or otherwise. He's going to be 20 points per map for you. And, that's something to keep in mind. And potentially, like, he might not spike you up and get you very many 200-plus point weeks. But if you need someone who's going to get you 20 points per map, he can be there for you. And as the Florida Mayhem potentially get better, maybe they're going to be taking it to 5 more often, which is going to be good for you if you are a Zuppe owner. And, I mean, again, Florida Mayhem players are probably going to be as sought after as they ever have been on the week that they win. But they are also, with the exception of probably Tvik, and Logic's, probably floating around a lot of free agency rosters. So Zuppe, if you need some consistency, maybe a pretty good pickup for you.
Yeah, and I do want to just point out, it's very likely, at least in one of the cases, right, Jonak would have been higher than him had all of his maps counted. Sleepy was within shouting distance of that. Obviously, the one map he got against NY gave him -2 points, so who knows? Maybe it didn't. Maybe it helped Sleepy in the long run. Right. But I would tend to think there was at least a decent chance Sleepy would have been able to get up over him as well. So again, it's maybe artificially propping Zuppe up a little bit, but nonetheless, like you said, he's been consistent, and anybody that can put up 150 plus points is valuable to me as a lower end starting support player. Not all teams are created equal. You don't get to have top 5s everywhere. So, definitely able to make use of him there. Let's move into the DPS side of things. Well, there's 2 guys here that share a team. Whichever one of you picks one of them, discuss them both for us. I'll start us off here and talk about Asher. He had a very, very big week. He was the number 2 DPS player, number 6 overall. He was tied for that particular spot. Yeah, I mean, 235 points from a guy that doesn't play all the maps is kind of ridiculous, right? He just had a phenomenal week. He did play every map in their first matchup. I'm blanking on the order of them, but I do have it open. Yeah, so against the Los Angeles Valiant, I believe he did play every single map, and then he did sub around. LA kind of went back to their old style of, we're going to let every combination of our 3 DPS players play together during the match. So a little bit tough there, but as long as the Gladiators are making the most of their opportunity to win, right? As long as it's going well for them, I think these guys will continue to have value. And I mean, they've been doing this kind of roulette game here with their DPS players for so long that the players are getting comfortable with it. I'm not seeing a big downturn when they make these changes, right? I mean, just hydration's ridiculous. Right now, Asher stopped struggling. Like, this week was kind of an announcement week for him. Hey, I'm playing like myself again. What you expected coming in is here. So I think he's one to keep an eye on, and he's somebody that's probably pretty low and might even maybe not be open and like available, but he might be somebody that you've been leaving on your bench, and now it might be time to consider it. But Blevins, talk to us. I mean, I'm assuming you want these McDonald's players.
Oh, I do. I've been advocating them improperly for so many weeks, and finally, the week I don't pick them to win, they slap me in the face. But yeah, the leaders here, Tvik and Logix, obviously the 2 DPS players for the Florida Mayhem here. It's really same sort of situation as Zuppe, except it's kind of interesting here. So Zuppe had a 10-point differential between his 2 games, a win and a loss, or a loss and a win, respectively, rather. But both Logix and Tvik had more points in the loss, actually. He had 142 points in the loss versus Houston and 123 points in the win versus Dallas, whereas Logix really kind of, he had 79 points in the loss and 145 in the win, which, I mean, honestly, 80 points in a game is really not bad. I'll take a 160 point week, but not necessarily when you're supposed to be a star DPS player. And if you look at some of the weeks for them, they've really been Logic's. I mean, has had some inconsistency. He's only had two 200 plus point weeks. I guess one he had a 198, but yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting, especially with the players coming in. Obviously, I think that the new players from Mayhem are going to make the team better, but it's not necessarily going to make the individual players on your fantasy team for the Florida Mayhem better unless you pick up the new ones that are playing. So who knows how they're going to end up playing those players. So
all right, last DPS leader of the week is Dante. He put up 189 points. That's number 7 DPS. But let's look at this in a little more closely. He put up 189 points, but that's not including 3 maps that he got out of. He put up 170 points alone in the first game against Dallas. Then they put up 19 points, I believe. Yeah, he put up 19 points in the first map, or I guess it was map 2 that's the only one that's in there. But in one map, and that's just at his average. It's really close to his league average his points per map on league average right now is 23.40. So it looks like he, even in a loss, he was still getting his average there. I think, had he played that out, he would have gotten another 60 points. That would have put him number 2. Wow, number 2. He would have been the number 2 overall support or DPS. Dante has really picked it up this season, and this split, I guess you can say. He just overall, I really like how he's turning about. It just stinks that it's just in time for Sinatra to turn 18, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, as soon as Dante finds his, he's starting to really find his groove, Sinatra turns 18, and
let's move the conversation to talk about the tank feeders of the week. Asmith, I know you had an 0-2 week this week, so why don't you start us off and discuss some of the people that really cost you going into this week and made you go 0-2 in our expert leagues.
Okay, look, I'll take this guy that cost me. I own him in a couple of different leagues. It's Cool Matt. I have thankfully learned not to start him because of this new stage 2 diva thing that's really hurting. I think Cool Matt, he put up 105 points, number 17 overall tank. I don't think he's a startable player anymore. In tanks, unless you're desperate, I wouldn't start Cool Matt. He's just not doing that well. And look, I as much as it pains me to say, because I actually like Cool Matt as a person, but since it's one of your Houston players, I don't really find as much dislike in this. I'm okay with saying it. Sit Cool Matt. Last week he put up 47 points. The week before he put up 97. He's not a startable player. 105 has been the highest points he scored in the last 3 weeks. That's just not good enough.
Yeah,
not good enough. Cool Matt, stop feeding.
It's something we've seen across the board on all diva players too. So even the more aggressive guys are seeing way less points. And Cool Matt's always been known for a very defensive style of diva. He's not setting out to get all the frags and all the kills on his team. And I think we were seeing him able to put up those acceptable point totals because, listen, when you hear Mercy go for a resurrection, you can send in a self-destruct at that Mercy, right? And she has to hold still for a while. So I think that was helping them as diva players get a lot of these kills. So Cool Matt's losing that. And if nothing else, there's just more bodies and more players alive that can die, right? And can give you an opportunity to get kills. So that's hurting him. And in combination with a couple other things, not even to discount the struggles of Houston. Obviously, that's an impact as well. But I agree with you. Cool Matt, not a lock and load starter. He's somebody you can use in the event of oh, my tank's playing against Shanghai and I'm worried he's not going to play or something like that. Then you might want to bring in Cool Matt. But for the time being, if possible, leave him on the bench. But yes, not. Don't worry, we're not saying anything like you shouldn't. He's bad for Overwatch or anything like that. This is strictly a fantasy conversation, chat. So A. Smith might have meant to throw a little shade there, but it was mostly at me, not at Cool Matt. So
absolutely, I love Cool Matt. He's a great person overall. I think my favorite player and probably my favorite American player right now. Period. He's just such a good personality. Yeah. But in fantasy, he's feeding.
Blevins, who do you got as a feeder at the tank position this week?
Yeah, I'll take Miro. Look, he was on the. I don't know, what did they call S plus and S minus team? I think is what Bren called the two Shanghai or the two Seoul teams. Nope, doesn't count.
It was close.
It was close. But he just didn't play against Shanghai. He did have 74 points, which is really just not good for your fantasy team. But I'm trying to see where. Oh God, where did he go? He had 74 points, 0. So I mean, even like 74 points total, or for one game, is even not super great. It's like slightly below average, I would say. So even in the match that he did play, he wasn't doing that great. I mean, he would have had 140 something points if you just double if he would have played and you double that would have put him at number 9 or 10. So really, like, not super great this week anyway, even if he did play in the first match, but he didn't. So like, super feed. Again, we've talked about like Miro when the leagues first started. It's like, oh, Miro's going to be a top player. He's a really aggressive tank, maybe going to get you a lot of points. That didn't really pan out in stage 1. Then stage 2 starts. He's starting to do better. Seoul seems to have a hang on their roster and how to play him and how to utilize him best. Okay, great. And now he's just like, oh, we're only going to play him sometimes. Or like sometimes we're just going to have a second team. And who knows if they're going to continue to do this or what. But this kind of risk added into the mix is not good for you if you are an owner of Miro in a fantasy team.
Well, one thing I'll say is maybe don't plan on him against, your bottom 3, right? Like your Shanghais, your Floridas at the end. But he will say, the low point total in the Philadelphia match, it was basically 3 maps. Gibraltar didn't count. It was a 1-0 win because Philly didn't take the first point. Right. The King of the Hill map, I think they might have been close, but they only went to 2. So it's a little bit excusable, the lower point total in the one game. As a Miro owner, I have no issues.
I mean, it still happened. It wasn't like due to a bug or them not playing him that happened. It was them.
Sure. It did happen, but like 70 points isn't bad. And then if you couple that with another week where like there's no way he would appear on this list, you just might not be necessarily like he might have been in swoosh territory.
Yeah.
And he probably would have had a phenomenal game had he actually played against Shanghai. But we need to expect the bench players to play there at least until maybe Shanghai gets their subs in order and they're dangerous enough people can't sleep on them like that. That would be great. For fantasy purposes, but we'll see. The tank I'm going to talk about here is Nomi. Listen, we just like 2 weeks in a row went off about how consistent he'd been and how it didn't matter, and there was a bug, so he's only got 3 points against New York Excelsior.
Called it. That's all I'm going to say. Called it.
But listen, Nomi was still not quite there.
Points in the first map, though.
Yeah, he's still.
Hey, shut your mouth. He's still feeding. Called it.
No matter, we'll just move the goalposts and call it good.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, sometimes that's exactly what you got to do.
Left the country. That's all I'm saying. What?
Right. And you are a peasant this week as a result. Nomi is somebody that I never wanted to use him anyways, but it's worth noting we just started to talk about how he could have been okay, and let's give him the extra 9 points that this theoretically cost him against New York and still call it a bad week. I'm very comfortable doing that. No San Francisco player was going to have a great boost from that New York matchup. But let's move along here, talk about some support feeders. Again, I'll let Blevins kick this one off here because I think there's somebody, I don't know, maybe he wants to avoid that one actually since it's the feeder section.
That's fine. It was Arc. There was a bug. Okay, that's great. You got me. Let's see, it's 71 points in the first map, which again is like all right. It's not great, or in the first match rather, and then 19 in the one map against San Francisco. But like this is like, oh well, if you had Arc and you were relying on Arc, you got screwed over this week because not because of him, but because of Winston's lab, maybe not even because of Winston's lab, but because of just the system and how it works.
So let's change the conversation a little bit since the bug's there. Let's give him his 20 points in those 3 maps that he missed and place him at the number 11 support at the week, which is about where he'd fall. Is that good enough for you? How would you view that if he'd gotten credit for everything and that's how it worked out? Where would 11 fall for you with Arc?
Yeah, I mean, it's so what that would put him at how many points?
140
overall?
or so.
140. Let's see.
That's
I mean,
the best Lucio.
yeah, I mean, honestly,
Goose.
like compared to Arc,
Yeah.
that would still be his stage high. For stage 2, he's really not been. Obviously, he didn't play the first week, and then he had 128 last week, 90 this week. I mean, he's had big weeks before. He didn't have under 100. 175 was his low in stage 1. So really, like, it's less of a feed this week and more of a feed this stage for him.
Yeah.
It's like night and day almost. Obviously, not being able to play Mercy has really cost him a lot of points. So I think now is probably, maybe it's just the time to see, like, he's not the 150 plus 175 plus support that you maybe luckily got when you drafted him.
Yeah.
He's just going to be a average, like, 100 and change point player, unless he really changes something.
Yeah, so I kind of view him right in that conversation with Big Goose as like, yes, I'd rather have one of the, the starting flex support players for most teams over him, but you can definitely use him, right? It's very difficult to have that many support players, and I think he'll be valuable in the sense that it's going to be a consistent point total for him. New York doesn't have a backup for him, as we saw when he was out injured, so he's not going to be sitting or anything like that. They're bringing in a support player, so we hear. I don't think we've got any official announcements on that or anything yet, but we'll have to wait and see exactly how that plays out. But for the time being, I think you can really rely on him as maybe like your fifth guy, at the bottom of your bench, maybe, or at the top of your bench, or at the bottom of your starting lineup. And I don't think this week, obviously, with it being bug related, is much of an issue. But I'll go ahead before Asmith can say anything bad about him. I will talk about. Oh no, yeah, that one's yours because you put it there. Yeah, I didn't even want that one there. Okay, so I'll talk about Kellex here. He had 110 points. It was good for the number 16 DPS player. I mean, basically, this is like a readjustment to me, right? Like, obviously, Boston's playing worse. They were involved in 4-0s this week, which we don't like from a fantasy perspective. But at the end of the day, we were getting a better performance from this guy last stage on the same role. And I think we just need to readjust and kind of view him as one of the worst flex supports you can have for fantasy purposes, at least until we see Boston turn around.
Alex isn't a flex support; he's a main support.
Oh, is he the Lucio? Okay, well that makes a little more sense.
Flex support.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Well, who was playing the Mercy for them last stage?
Kellex.
Was it Kellex? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's readjusting off of that Mercy role, anyways, into a new role. Okay, so I got them switched up. So maybe not as bad of a week as it looked when I thought he was a flex support in my head for a minute there. But still, not. I don't think number 16 at DPS, and I think that's about where I'd put him. Support, yeah, man. I'll just screw up everything today. I'm gonna stop talking. Hey, Smith, just take it away. Talk about your guy, because I clearly don't know anything about Kellex and shouldn't be talking.
I'm gonna take Boink at 78. Look, he put up 78 points, number 23 overall support. Look, the reason here is Lucio's just aren't putting up the same point totals as flex support. Yeah, Mercy and Mercy. Either way, they're not putting up the points. And Boink wasn't even a Mercy player. He wasn't. Banny was playing their Mercy. And as we've seen right now, Banny's playing he played 2 maps out of the 5 against. Is that right?
Florida.
Yeah, I think he played 2 out of the 5 against Florida.
2 or 3. Bonnie definitely came back in.
Yeah. What I'm saying is Banny's playing, or Bonnie, or however you want to pronounce it.
Sometimes he's playing.
Yeah, but he's playing more than 0 what he played last week. He put up 0 points last week, so we assumed that Boink was going to be starting, like, period, and he's not. And it just kind of surprised me overall. I don't think Boink is going to even be I think he's at right now he's a bottom tier main support. I just don't think Boink is an option that you want to have on your bench even.
Yeah, I don't see him as somebody that needs to be owned for sure. If you do want to pick him up on the thoughts that maybe Houston moves more into Lucio only or something like that, I don't really know, but I don't think that lines up very well with their want to play more Widowmaker, play more Junkrat than most teams do. Like, those are heroes that benefit from the Mercy, so I think we're going to have to constantly just assume going forward that Boink and Banny cannibalize each other's fantasy value to the point where neither of them can be played.
I was going to say, even if they do move to 100% Lucio and Boink starts to see 100% play, like Lucio is getting so much fewer points than the Mercy was last stage. Like, if you just look at Arc, like, he was getting, like I said, never had under 175 points, and now, like, he's barely able. He has not gotten 150, and, like, even if we project he gets his average in this week with the bug, he's still not at 150. So it's like you're seeing a significant downshift in points from those main supports who are really potentially at the top end of your teams are now just like you're going to get some points out of them.
Yeah, the Lucios I want to own, it's a list of 3, and it's Big Goose, it's Arc, and it's Toby, and there's nobody else. And even Toby, honestly, isn't really living up to. I mean, he's ownable from where he's performing at. No thanks. I don't think his point total's been there, and I'm worried that even if it has been, it's been while they were hot, and then now they're not anymore. So the inconsistency of Philadelphia, maybe it's just being a Shadowburn owner and feeling jilted, but I don't want anything to do with
Neptuno's been all right.
Philadelphia.
Yeah, he put up
players.
184 in the first week and 163.
Well, when they destroyed the first week.
Yeah, when they were doing great, and then it's fallen off.
He's losing like 20 points a week right now.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, Neptuno's ownable. I wouldn't want to be starting him. Like I said, basically, I wouldn't want to be starting anybody on the Fusion roster. I would own the supports. I would own. I don't know, not much else. It's a weird spot. It's kind of like
Carpe.
Oh, definitely Carpe.
Yeah, Carpe.
Yeah. He's locked and loaded. But yeah, it's a little bit rough to analyze and predict how Philly players are going to do. But let's move in and talk about the DPS feeders for the week. I will start things off. I'm just going to throw EQO out there. Listen, it's great to see that he's starting and coming off the illness. We weren't sure if it was really an illness or whatever, because we don't like to just take their word for it when they're incentivized to lie to us. Right. But listen, he did get his starting job back. He just didn't really produce with it. Only 134 points. He was the number 16 DPS. He probably didn't kill you. It's possible to have won with EQO in your lineup, but I think given what we saw from him in that first week of the stage, we wanted to see a repeat of that, or at least close, and we really didn't. So he didn't take over and win for you at all. He's an option at DPS going forward. Play the matchups, and hopefully you've got other people you can alternate with them when they're bad. Blevins, take it away with the second DPS feeder.
Yeah, I'll take Dream Casper here just so I can force Asmith to talk. My peasant.
I want to. I have a rant. Thank you, Lord DeathBlow.
Good. You have a much better rant than I would for effect. But I mean, you look at Dream Casper stage 1 to stage 2, and it almost looks exactly like Arc. It almost looks exactly like Arc and a lot of the other Mercy players shifting over to Lucio, and it's like, what's going on with Dream Casper? He had amazing weeks in stage 1. His lowest was 171. He had almost 300 points in week 3 with 271, 238, and a 198 as well. So very, very strong stage 1. And now it's like 141, 78 this week, 129 points. It's like, I mean, again, if you've had Dream Casper since the beginning, he peaked and got you a lot of value early on, considering how low rated he was at the beginning when you probably did your league. But like, if you traded for Dream Casper, and you probably traded a lot for him, and he's probably been an anchor of your team, especially like for a 10-man league. But like, now it's like he is not that role right now. He's gonna get you some points, but you really don't want to be getting 120, 130, sub 150 points out of a star player on your team. That's just not going to win you games.
Yeah, we need to see them back in competitive matches that like go to 5, or the maps run long, or something that really forces him to see more action and just pop more ultimates and do the things that help out fantasy players. But Asmith, the peasant that you are, you get to go last. So who do you got for a DPS feeder this week?
Look, I'm gonna take effect this week, and I know it's a little surprising because he was the number 11 overall DPS, so he's not just trashed here right now. He put up 160 points. But the thing is, the reason why I have here is he had a downtick in playtime. He missed a couple of maps. They're starting to rotate, at least if we can go off of what they did last game, which by all means, I'm not going to count that because Lord knows no one knows what Dallas is doing this go around. So, including, I'm pretty sure Dallas doesn't even know what they're doing.
Nope.
So, look, it looks like they're rotating a little bit, and he might get a downtick. And 160 points is not what you paid for him. You paid for Effect to be a number one, number between top. You paid for him to be a top 5 DPS, period, every week, and he's not that. He hasn't been that, and he's just continuing to. He will have peak weeks, but he is not consistently there. Right now, Effect is the number 16 overall DPS. However, he is, and the reason being is he's played so many fewer maps. He's played between 10 to 15 fewer maps than everybody else above him. So I just hedge your bets on Effect right now. He kind of fed a little bit compared to what you were expecting, and looks like he's going to have a little less playing time in the coming weeks. With AKM and Rascal maybe getting some more playing time. So we'll see. Mostly Rascal getting playing time.
Yeah, their second match seemed like they were taking a page from the Gladiators playbook, just kind of showing every DPS combo they had at their disposal that doesn't involve Seagull, at least with the 3 they want to be playing. Right. So like you said, just stay away from Dallas players right now. It's a bit of a mess.
Well, I think stay away from starting Dallas players. I think Effect is another one of those players that, like, Dallas is a mess right now. They're not looking good. He seems like the type of player that really, really wants to win and do well. So, like, it's possible he shops himself around, honestly. Unless he gets stuck in some sort of, contract jail. But I think he's the type of player that's like, just send me to London. I'll do it.
I have a mini rant here. Look, you know what I think Dallas should do? Since I'm not in any podcast, I'm going to say it right now. I think Dallas should blow up the team, get rid of their former envious players, build around Effect and Rascal. Just throwing that out there. I fully think that that's what we should do. Maybe if OGE's playing well, go with OGE. I actually like Custa even, but I think you get rid of Mickey, you get rid of Taimu, you get rid of Coco, Chips even. You kind of shop all those players, get rid of them, clean system, play with a new team. And I think that won't happen now, but I think stage 2, that's a possibility.
Going into stage 3, you mean? Yeah, it's definitely possible.
I meant season 2.
Season 2. Yeah. I think that's when we'll see the big reset from Dallas. But I'm kind of in a position with you after this week. What are you expecting to happen this year? Like, what are you waiting for? Live in the future, not in the past. This is like not scrimming on PTR when it's out. You're just living in the past, man. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But this is going to be the part of the show where Blevins gets to take a break. And we're going to be running through the weekly matchups here for each of the teams. I'll take the Atlantic Division. Asmith will take the Pacific Division. We were pretty quick with them last week. Hopefully we can keep that same pace. I'll start us off here with the Boston Uprising. They go against the Dallas FOWL and the LA Valiant. They only have 5 maps this week, but listen, I think they're going to do just fine against Dallas, who's obviously a bit of a mess right now. Dallas is likely to be playing a good amount of dive. Boston should be much more schooled at dive. I think Boston will do just fine, whether it's Kalios or whether it's Gamzu. I don't know that I'd start either of those guys, but use your Boston players basically as you've been using them. There's a decent chance that they do, at least compete. Like, I don't expect them to be completely blown out by the Valiant, though I do expect the Valiant to win there. So they should be able to put up a decent point total. They do play on Wednesday and Friday, so they have the day off. A lot of teams do not have the day off this week. So one of them is the Florida Mayhem. They're going against LA here. They've got the Valiant and the Gladiators. Only 5 maps on the week for them. They do play on Thursday and Friday, so in back-to-back days. I expect both of these to be particularly brutal for the Florida Mayhem. I expect to see a little bit of Zappas thrown in there, because what do they have to lose at this point? Also, top shelf meme from the Florida Mayhem, having him in the crowd, the shrouded figure in the glasses, the reveal, everything like that. It was
so good.
So funny. Keep an eye on that as the meme of the week on the flagship show. I'm guessing that's going to make it there, as it was hilarious. But yeah, so a rough week from Florida. Don't don't buy into what happened last weekend. I don't think it's going to be a predictive thing going forward. I would still be very, very cautious there. If you've been using them and you don't have a better option, you can continue to. But the next is the Houston Outlaws. They've got matchups against the Los Angeles Gladiators and the San Francisco Shock. 7 maps on the week for the Houston Outlaws. Fortunately, the bad ones are against San Francisco, which could be an opening for San Francisco. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend like Houston's, in a great spot or locked and loaded right now. But I will say, despite the resurgence of the Gladiators, I think there's a really, really good chance that we're going to see a 5-map brawl from the Gladiators and the Houston Outlaws. Listen, the Gladiators not too long ago lost twice in a row, back to back, to the Dallas FOWL, who one of their fans just said should hit the reset button. They seem to be a really aggressive dive team right now, given they're still working Fissure in a little bit, although that gets less and less of an issue with each passing week. And I think the anti-dive mentality and play style of the Houston Outlaws is going to allow them to perform pretty well here. And again, Kings Row and Gibraltar being in the map pool instead of Hollywood and Route 66 could lead to being 2 completely different Houston Outlaws teams, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm still terrified that they seem to just be giving up on the first map of each match, making subs, refusing to learn the lesson that they learned in Stage 1. After Stage 1, Week 1, they learned a harsh lesson on subs and then threw it out when Stage 2 started, and it's driving me crazy. But nonetheless, I think we've got a good chance to see a 5-map brawl here with the Gladiators. Hopefully they've learned that lesson again this week, and hopefully it doesn't reset again and we have to learn it again next stage. But yeah, for the time being, if it wasn't San Francisco, Houston might be in for a rough week. But either way, they should be 1 match here to allow you to play your Houston Outlaws players. And it's not like you'd bench Raucus at the moment anyways, or Muma for that matter. So continue to play your Houston Outlaw players as you've been. The London Spitfire are next. 8 maps this week. They play on Friday and Saturday, so a bit of a rough week. They do, however, play against the San Francisco Shock, which will give them a bit of an easy matchup here, and then they also play against Seoul, but expect London to do the ridiculous thing that they love to do and split their team in 2 and play GC Busan against the lesser team, and then play Kongju against Seoul, and that is going to mean not much fantasy value across the board. Continue to play your DPS players. Hope they stop sitting Birdring under any circumstances, right? He was the one that sat this week, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, London players are tough to own in fantasy. You know what you're getting into at this point with each week, just to the fact that you're probably only going to see the A team in one of those matches, unfortunately. New York Excelsior are next. They've got an easy clap, and they've got probably the toughest match, the highlight match of the stage for me so far, at least looking at them ahead of time. New York goes against Seoul and Shanghai. The Seoul match is going to be great. New York has lost once this stage when they didn't have Arc. Seoul has not lost yet this stage. I think these are the top 2 teams of Stage 2 meeting up at the right time. Neither of them has any weaknesses that I can see at the moment. They're both playing really, really phenomenal Overwatch. Keep an eye on that match. That'll be on Wednesday. Pine is likely to play against Shanghai. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't know which one of the DPS is going to sit. Is it usually been one or the other so far?
Usually SABLB.
Yeah.
Because Pine plays Tracer.
Yeah, I'm more worried about SBB for sure, but we haven't seen much Pine at all in this meta, so it could very well be that like Libero sits, but it's hard to imagine, right? Libero's been fantastic and honestly, like quietly so, and I don't expect him to really sit. I don't know. If I was New York, I don't know. It'd be so hard to sit either of them because I just want them both to get their playing time and just continue to work on everything that they look. They're just so solid right now. It seems crazy to me to switch it up, but at the same time, I'm not going through the daunting schedule they are, and these guys do need a break from time to time. So keep an eye on that. One of the DPS will likely sit against Shanghai. And then Philadelphia Fusion, they play against the Dragons and the FOWL. I mean, these are our guys this week, right? They play Wednesday and Saturday. They got a day off. They do have 7 maps to prepare for. But I love Philly players this week. I'm willing to play EQO. I'd be willing to play Fraggy if I needed a tank, to be perfectly honest with you. So keep that in mind. You can start with confidence. Boombox, everybody from Philadelphia, assuming Boombox is healthy again. He was sick one match this week, but I think we just have to assume they're healthy and going to rebound, because apart from Gamzu being sick and out of the country, that's the only time we've seen this kind of carry over multiple weeks. So yeah, keep that in mind. And Asmith, take it away with the Pacific Division.
Look, I'm gonna kick it off with Dallas Fuel as I always do. We've got Boston and Philly this week. Only playing 5 maps, which is good. We have a more easily focus here, and we play Wednesday and Saturday, which is the first game of the week and the last match of the week. So we've got a lot of time between. I don't actually expect Dallas to win, but if there's a chance, I think this week might be the chance that they've got. If they just say, forget it, we're not playing for playoffs, we're not playing for this, we're just going to try some stuff new and figure it out. I think you run like an effect rascal and try dive and figure it out. But right now, I would stay away from Dallas players. I mean, this might be one of their best setups this week. Compared to who else they have. I expect this to be one of the better weeks for Dallas, but I don't expect to be a good week by any means. Next, we're going to Los Angeles with the Gladiators. They are playing Houston and Florida. Like DeathBlow said, Houston could be a 5-map knockdown dragout. I think even though Florida is getting better, I think that the Gladiators are getting significantly better. I like the Gladiators, how they are able to play against the dive, and that's what Florida likes to run is dive. They're not an anti-dive team, and Florida tends to do, or the Gladiators tend to do better against dive teams. They do have 7 maps, and they play Thursday and Friday, so we'll see how that goes. And that's back to back. Ooh, they have a last match on Thursday, first match on Friday, so that could be tough. We'll see. We're going off to Valiant. They are playing Florida and Boston, and I like these matchups for Valiant. I think this is going to be a good run for Valiant to just get 2 relatively easy wins. I'm not going to say easy wins because we said that last week, and then all of a sudden craziness happened. So don't get me tripping here, but I like Valiant to take it up. They got 7 maps, and they're playing Thursday, Friday. So this is a good week to start your Valiant players. Shock, they are playing London and Houston. I think this is not going to be fun trip for Shock. I do think Houston is downfalling a little bit, and Shock is kind of rising a little bit, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I don't have as much faith in Shock, really. They are playing 6 maps, and they're playing on a Friday and Saturday, so I just don't think it's going to matter for them. I expect 2 losses here for Shock, and I don't think Baby and Dante are going to put up nearly the points that you want them to. Next, we're going off with Seoul. They are playing New York and London. Welcome to the jungle here, because this is the fight of the week. Seoul is playing presumably the 2 best teams right now in this stage in New York and London. They're playing all Korean teams, and they got 6 maps. They're playing Wednesday and Saturday, so they've got some time in between, and they don't have quite as many maps. So this could be really, really fun. I expect only the starters for Seoul to play. I don't expect to see Guido or Pookie or Zephyr or Wakid or Bunny even. I think it's going to be Munchkin, Flutta, and then rest, unless Munchkin starts stinking, and then you might sub in Bunny. I just don't foresee. I foresee this to be only Seoul starters. This is going to be a good week to play your Seoul starters. This is going to be a great week for them. And then you got the Shanghai Dragons. They're playing Philly and New York. I just don't see them getting any wins. They got 6 maps. Wednesday, Thursday. Last game on Wednesday. First game on Thursday. It's going to be tough for them. I'm sorry, Shanghai, but just we always kick them, but. Right now they haven't done anything, so don't play any of their players. Shocker.
Yeah, even when you guys wanted to play them, they didn't. Yeah. They didn't reward you for that when they had the easiest possible schedule. So completely hands off Shanghai. Listen, even after the replacements get here, like in fantasy, it's okay to make teams and players prove it before you're willing to trust them. So just go slow with that. Make them show you some consistency, some reliability. Even if it's just like some of these other teams that can only put up good numbers from their players in fantasy when they have the easy matchups, like that would be an improvement for Shanghai, because right now they never put up numbers. Let's move along, though, here as we are running a little light on time. I want to talk about some sleepers this week, and we're going to start things off in the DPS category, where I was victorious by picking Effect over AKM and Munchkin. So I am, however, thinking that Blevins' pick of Munchkin was pretty strong, but there's no Shanghai to leave him on the bench for one of these matches. So I'm going to try taking Munchkin this week. Listen, like Asmith said, there's no bad matchups for Soul. There's only close matchups, and in fantasy, we love close matchups. So I am locked and loaded, ready to take Munchkin here. So I will leave it to Asmith to go next.
I'm going to take EQO here. Look, it seems like they're committed to this EQO thing. I actually believe that EQO was sick and that that's why Shadowburn played. I think they're going to stick with it, and I really like Fusion's matchup here. I think they're going to get 2 wins. They're playing Shanghai and Dallas. As much as it pains me to say, I think they're going to get 2 wins. And it looks like EQO is going to put up some big numbers this week. I expect to see the EQO we saw the first week we saw him. Lord Belvins, your pick.
Lord Belvins.
You're muted. You're muted.
I'm muted. Of course I'm muted because I was muted for so long.
It's okay. I played the trumpets to carry through the silence.
Okay, this is now the 3rd time I'm switching my pick. So originally I had Tvik, and then I'm like, oh, the Florida Mayhem are doing great. They potentially have maybe close matchups this week, but then I looked at his points in the previous weeks, and it's like, okay, no, this is a huge outlier. So I went off to it. Then I was going to pick Hydration, and I'm told that Hydration is number 20. So you know what? I don't want him anyway because his numbers don't look as good. So I'm going with Asher, another LA Gladiators player, which I didn't think I would ever pick for anything because I've just never been. I've never been impressed with LA Gladiators players unless they are in fact a gigantic goose. But he's had somewhat consistent performances. Really what it boils down to is LA Gladiators is on the uptick. It seems like they've kind of figured out their rotation for their players. Fissure was a huge boon for them. They're playing against Florida, which is probably going to be a win, and Houston Outlaws, which is who knows? Like they're again, this is the 2 teams starting one up top, one at bottom, and they're going to collide here, and it's possible that they're going to deflect off in opposite directions. And I think and we talked about this in the pre-show that like LA Gladiators and Houston Outlaws may have like Freaky Friday last week where like they just kind of swap spots. So who knows? This is probably going to be a close match, a likely 5-game series, which only bodes better for your fantasy players. I want pieces of both Hydration and Asher, but I'm going to go with Asher here for my official pick.
For what it's worth, I was wrong on my note that said Hydration was number 19, or was number 20, because he was actually number 19, and Asher's number 20, so also ineligible by our rules. But you already said it out loud, so we're not going any longer into this.
Fine on here.
It's totally fine. Yeah, no, it is fine. It is fine. We've said it's not a hard and fast rule. We're more concerned about getting good advice out there than stopping you from cheating. But let's move along and talk about some tank sleepers. And Blevins Kalios was good enough to get you not only a Lord title, but the best tank sleeper of the week. So talk to us about your tank sleeper this week.
Yeah, I'm going with Poco. Like you've been talking about, like this is a bye week, a BUY week for Philly. Bye. And it ain't no lie. I please boo me for that.
I want to, but
I want to, but I love.
I don't have a
him
boot
so
right.
much.
Yeah.
Everyone
wants to
I can't
boo,
help
but
it.
secretly they want to clap. They've got a W against the Shanghai Dragons, and probably a W against Dallas Fuel, like you guys talked about. I mean, the only issue here is that like the Diva players have been kind of meh for points, but you know what? I'll take them anyway. I'm gonna go with Poco here.
I mean, in our defense, all we have to pick are Diva players. So
Blevins,
they're all done.
Blevins is in love with the Poco, but
Yes.
A. Smith, talk to us about your tank sleeper of the week.
Next, this one I'm gonna pick. I'm gonna pick Bishu. I have a feeling. It's a gut feeling. I don't have like any evidence really to back this up, but he did do better last week, and so with Gladiators doing better, I think there's a chance here that with Gladiators doing better, Bishu continues to do better, and I don't know. I'm not. This is a gut feeling. I like that they're playing Florida and they're playing Houston and Florida this week with a potential of 5. I think Bishu might just sneak above the rest of these Diva players. Sneaky Diva pick, Bishu.
Yeah, personally, I prefer both of your sleepers to the one that I'm going to be picking here. But give me note for this week. Listen, I mean, there's the easy matchup against Dallas, and I think Boston has a chance to be really competitive against the Valiant.
Stop it.
I'll stop it when they stop it, man. I think I've got to not be right.
Leave them alone.
I
man.
can't. It's my job. I literally have to make these picks. But yeah, so give me note this week. Again, the easy matchup. They've only got 5 maps. They've got the day off, which is a luxury this week. I think note is kind of a safe pick here. I'm hoping that this gets me to second place in this conversation next week, so that way I've got a chance to push up higher up. I would personally be picking Poco here if it were up to me. But let's go ahead and move this conversation over to supports, where Verbo was good enough to beat a bench player and a Shanghai Dragon. Who knew? So I will be leading us off. And again, I just want a piece of this Philly train. The matchups this week are too strong. I don't even know that bad Philly can show up and ruin this for us. I mean, they can make it not as good, but Boombox just feels really safe to me. Despite the illness, again, if we keep an eye out, right? Do they play on Wednesday? That's what I should have known already. They do. Okay.
They do.
On Wednesday.
So keep an eye on this, because it could very well be that you honestly know before your lineups are forced to lock. Right. Watch their Twitter feeds, things like that. It is the 3rd match of the night, so it's not likely, but really any indication that leads you, if you're really into it, watch their streams and stuff. Try to get any bit of information you possibly can, and if you find anything about it, tweet it at us at HNP_FOWLplay. But
For real.
Yeah, because we would love to give you guys some more advice, but it's so hard to find, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, so just trying to grab any piece of the fusion I can. Blevins, you are next, because a dragon is better than a 0, so you can give us your support sleeper.
Sure is. I've got Chips here, and this is going to be my patented kind of a risky pick here. Chips High-End, that is. He didn't play the previous 2 weeks. That's a big old fat 0. He had 141 this week. He has been known to put up a very good amount of points. Again, this was in Mercy meta, but even still, 140 points is still quite good. It's still not. We're not sure if Chips or Custa are going to be playing, but if Chips plays, he's probably going to win here. And that's what I'm going for. I'm shooting for the moon. No, I'm not shooting for the second place. I'm shooting for first or last. If you ain't first, you last.
All right, Lord Belvins, I'll take it from here then, buddy. Old pal. I'm going to go with my patented man that I keep picking, because he's forever just outside the top 15, and that's Harry Hook. I don't think he's just not quite good enough to get right above there, but he's just always right outside. And I'm just banking on Chips sitting the bench and Custa playing, and I'm banking on Boombox being sick, because I really do think that Chips and Boombox, if they play, they're going to do better than Harry. But here's the hoping, because Harry seems to be the patent of consistency. Yep. Harry gives you a good enough points to kind of start if you don't have like a really good player. He's like a top tier Lucio player, but we'll see. I like Harry, and I think he's won me the week before, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, a couple safe picks there from you guys, but hopefully the strength of schedule carries me to another support sleeper victory. Very little consistency, I've got to say, carrying over from week to week. Like, we just seem to constantly be recycling these and changing the order, which is probably good. It's a little more entertaining that way.
in our defense, there's only 12 teams, so there
Yeah.
are only so many players outside the top 15 that are actually playable.
This is a really difficult task coming up with these sleepers and trying to be right about it. So understand that all the people that we mentioned in these sleepers, they're there because they're inherently very risky, really probably except for Munchkin, because his status seems to have changed pretty recently. Lesser extent, same thing for EQO. So all of these are probably guys that you aren't using, but if you're desperate at one of these spots, they're meant to be 3 names that you can make a gamble on or roll the dice on. So let's move along here. Again, Douse the Flames is going to be a little different. We're not going position by position, calling out individual players unless there's individual players we want to call out. But my Douse the Flames this week is the Florida Mayhem. Call me crazy. I don't expect there to be 2 Florida Mayhem DPS players in the top 3 DPS scorers of this coming week.
You don't expect Florida Mayhem to do amazing again?
I also don't expect Swoosh to be the number 6 tank on the week. I don't expect Zupe to be the number 4 support on the week. We've got to calm down. These are tough matchups here. They're playing against both LA teams. The Valiant look really, really strong on this meta in particular. They've been having a really good time of things, and then the talk of the town right now is the LA Gladiators, so I don't want a piece of that. I'm super excited to see Zappos, so I hope we do. But Asmith, I know you wrote in this Douse the Flames, so I'll let you take it away here.
Look, I'm going to Douse the Flame on non-Tracer DPS players everywhere. I think Tracer DPS is the DPS you want to own in this Stage 2 meta. Looks like, Shadowburn, EQO, Dreamcasper, even Linkser when he's not playing, it just looks like all of these DPS, they're just slowly, out of the meta here. In terms of top scoring, even Fleta hasn't been amazing. So all of your non-Tracer DPS tend to be the bottom tier. They're kind of like your flex supports with, above, and then you have your like Lucio players. Right now it's like Tracer, and then it's like non-Tracer because they just kind of flex. But I'm dousing the flames on them all because I just don't think they're going to put up as many points as we expect.
Well, I don't know why I didn't notice it at the time when we were talking about support sleepers, but we have an opportunity here to run another Lord bet back in back-to-back weeks amongst you two in particular, since you guys took Chips and Harry as your support sleepers of the week. So I'm just going to offer it. Smith, you've got to be feeling jilted after going through this. So do you want revenge?
I really don't want it. I really don't want it.
You don't want it. I don't want it either. I have... I can't do another fuel.
He needs a week off of having to refer to you as Lord Blevins.
I want one of you two. I feel like you two should make a bet this week because I mean it's great being on top of the world, but you know what? I want you guys to have your shot too.
I'll take a bet on EQO Munchkin.
Ooh.
I'll take EQO over.
You want EQO on that? Oh man,
I want EQ over Munchkin.
I'll snap it off just to do it, but in the future, I probably wouldn't take it, so we'll go.
Okay.
We'll go Lord Bet.
I think Munchkin's gonna play bad and get benched.
It is decided.
So I think EQO is gonna go.
Normally, I wouldn't take it because I do really like both players this week.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a fair bet. I think like either team, either one's gonna win.
It's close, but it should. Yeah, I just in the future there'll be more about like I'm confident, you're confident, and we're fighting instead of like I think it's a coin flip, but I want to have fun. So.
Right. It'll be more like we both have two strong but different opinions.
Right.
I'm pretty confident that EQO is gonna win. So.
Well, we're only halfway there, but nonetheless, I'll take your bet offer.
I just want to take a Lord bet against both of you for Florida, but I can't. They've
done.
They've left it
Done. Too late. Can't take it away. Can't take it away. Cancel the Munchkin EQO bet. That is much better. You can refer to everybody as Lord next week. That's fine.
You've got it. Nope. It's already been made. Sorry.
All right. Munchkin versus EQO is on the books. We'll look for an opportunity to humiliate Blevins at a later date while he beats us in more leagues in more weeks. But to wrap up the show here, we've got a single mailbag question, guys. It's been a little bit of a quiet week. By all means, though, any questions you have this week or try to get them in early for us is what I'm getting at here. You can send them in the fantasy mailbag Discord server.
There's a couple more.
Or you can tweet at. Make sure you get them in here then while we have this conversation.
Yeah.
But I will start this one. Well, I don't want to start this one off. I want to come in at the end because I know I have a very different answer than you guys. But the Bellman wants to know, who do you guys think is going to be the fantasy MVP? So he wants kind of a early take, early late take. It's not the beginning of the season. We did it right at the start, but he wants an update who we think the fantasy MVP is going to be by the end of the year. A. Smith, let's start with you.
I like Jonak here, and I think me and Blevin same page. Jonak's put up close to 2,000 points. If you don't include the mess up there, he would have been at just about 1,900 points right now. That's more than everybody else, and more than everybody else by a long shot. I mean, that would be over Carpe by 200 points, and Carpe is the next nearest. Other than that, I mean, he would be close to 500 points above the next support player. If you're winning because Jonak, you kind of slept on Jonak a little bit, and then because when we first drafted, nobody really knew who Jonak was.
Mm-hmm.
We knew he was a good Korean ladder player, but we'd never seen him play before. And if you drafted him off of hearsay, you really did a good job, and you will probably win some leagues with Jonak.
Blevins, anything to add, or you just agree with him there?
Well, I do agree. I think if I had to choose right now, I would choose Jonak. But just so that I've got a little bit of something different to say, I'm looking at the overall scores for DPS, and the first name that I wouldn't necessarily if you think about when we first drafted the leagues, and even if you did a late league like we did for our second expert league, you look at the top and it's Carpe, Striker, Soon, Prophet, Kareev, Dante, Dream Casper. Obviously in stage 1, amazing. Stage 2 hasn't been so great, but if you think about where you got Dream Casper, probably quite low, and he was. I think you could make an argument that he was definitely a stage 1 MVP, because if you picked Dream Casper early, you're probably we're a player for the Boston Uprising doing a fantasy league, or a big fan of Tempo Storm, but he did way better than was expected. Now he's doing worse than what we expected based on stage 1, but I think he has the potential to if you got him in your last round at the beginning, he still probably pays off dividends.
Yeah, and I've got a different answer here than both of you, and I'm going to make up a word when I do it, so know it's on purpose. But listen, if you've got Fissure on your team, you probably picked him up off of free agency. You didn't have to pay much to get this guy. He was a back end pick in your draft, or he was a free agent acquisition, and now he has jumped straight up to the top of the list of tanks that you want to own and tanks that you want to start. And I think that the impact that a free agent acquisition like that can have on a team, and from fantasy football experiences of mine, those are the things that win you your league. So I think he's got the number one chance to be on most winning rosters at the end, because you're going to have your top end DPS players that you paid for, the ones that worked out and didn't shadow burn you or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I hope Winston's Lab puts out statistics like that. I always love looking at that, what tank player was on the most winning rosters, what, things like that. Those are awesome stats in the postseason to look at. Hopefully we get to do a couple recap episodes where we just really focus on the numbers like that and try to project next season. But yeah, so that's my pick here, just because I paid nothing for him. He was free. I think I have leagues where I dropped him and then picked him back up again, because it was just, you know what I mean? So it was just this weird nightmare with him, and I think people just lucked into him and then suddenly have the best team in their league because they were able to pick him up or add him at negative value that he had when he was on the London Spitfire.
In the same vein, you could potentially, although to a lesser extent, make the same argument for EQO. He potentially could be your best player right now.
If he pans out, and if he'd repeated his week 1 performance, I think we could easily make that prediction. But
I think he probably, especially since how the free see acquisitions work, like he potentially is taking like some dumpster teams and carrying them to like the mid to bottom to top of their respective leagues.
Yeah, but we've got another couple questions. Joker came in clutch while we were recording and sent us in some on Discord.
Yeah, these aren't all Joker.
Oh, they're not all Joker.
I'll get the names.
A couple people were clutch and sent us some questions while we were recording. This one from Joker. How do you think Dallas's lineup looks post xQc? That's a bit of an open-ended question. So we have to try to look at this from a fantasy perspective, given the show that we're on. So is there anybody whose value you think changes drastically as a result of the xQc release, other than OGE, who you can't even pick up yet, and probably should once he becomes available, because he's going to start right away. So Asmith, let's start with you. These are your boys. So who do you think is affected the most, whether positively or negatively, by the xQc move?
I think Dallas Fuel as a whole is affected negatively. All the players in Dallas.
Pause negatively?
Pause, no.
Pause negative.
Pause negative. I think they're all affected negatively there.
Possibly.
Possibly negative. There we go. I just don't like the way it kind of shook out, because Taimu's just not a tank, and it's going to hurt in the short term. It kind of forced their hand to get OGE. So maybe in the long run, I mean, if you're looking at this like 4D chess, dropping xQc forced them to get OGE, therefore OGE, and then Dallas gets better stage 3. I don't know, but ultimately I think it hurts the whole team. I think you're gonna have Taimu running tank for a while until OGE gets here, and it's not gonna be great.
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, I think you're right. It definitely hurts them. From an Overwatch perspective, I think it helps them tremendously. But anybody you wanna highlight here, Blevins? In this
I talked about Effect earlier, about how he might be at his low here, and Taimu as well. Although I don't think Taimu is a good investment, unless you get that best case scenario of his role getting changed in the game and him actually playing, and like a bunch of other things like falling in your way. I would stay away from a lot of Dallas Fuel players here, with the exception of Effect, if you can pick him up low, but not because he's going to be doing better necessarily on Dallas, but because he's going to be probably fine on Dallas, but he could potentially go to another team. And Dallas, like the roster, like A. Smith suggested, could completely be disrupted. Some of the players, Effect, I think for certain is going to end up on another team, but some of them just might.
I absolutely disagree with you. I think Effect's the player you build around and you blow up everybody else.
All Dallas fans tend to think that, but I will say this, from the outside, it looks like he's a tilt magnet.
Exactly.
I think he's a tilt magnet when the team sucks like they do, and then you have a xQc who's okay. I'm just gonna go off right now. Okay, look, xQc was problematic for this team, and he kind of helped affect this. Look, Effect was doing well, and when he's doing well, he's fine, but his team's not supporting him and backing him up. Therefore, he tilts a little bit, and I don't blame him. Everybody should be tilted on Dallas right now because they're ticked that they're doing bad.
If you're tilting players, they're contributing to your being bad, and you're not willing to move them, then you'll never get good again, because they'll just always be forever tilted.
I don't think Effect's the problem here. Effect never has been the problem.
I also don't think that if Effect leaves Dallas, it's because Dallas gets rid of him. I think it's because Effect says, don't play me on this. I'm thinking more like Effect says, trade me to a different team, or I'm just going to sit.
Yeah, nobody's there to make him sign a contract next season if he doesn't want to, and he's got a 1 year.
That's more what I was thinking. I think if you're Dallas, you should build around your best player, but I don't think that he necessarily wants to be there.
That's fair. He doesn't seem to enjoy the losing very much.
If they blow up the team, I think he would stick around.
But either way, my answer here is going to be, I think this is good for Rascal. I think this is bad for AKM. The Taimu being on the main tank for the time being, and I don't know enough about OGE. I do know he's a very solid Winston player, like a very, very good Winston player. But I don't know what his Reinhardt capabilities are. It's just been too long since it's been meta to know. So I think this signifies more of a shift into a dive composition, which I think will lead to more Effect and more Rascal. AKM will still see some playing time, but I think that's what it's going to do mostly to the lineup, is push them more into dive, which is probably a good thing for this team. And then, you know, that's going to leave less room for AKM, though like you're still going to want him on Gibraltar where there's so much high ground to play your soldier. There's going to be times when they want to bring him in for sure. But for my money, I would be using more Rascal than AKM, and that's not been the case before this. So we'll have to wait and see what it does. Yes, they were less cowardly this week than last week, though it didn't help them much. A question here from Bacon Boy. I don't know for sure that I got that right. He didn't comment on my pronunciation that way.
It's 100% right. Don't
but
care.
It's right now, whether or not he meant it to be that way. He asked, should I sit Neko for Munchkin, Kareev, Dreamcasper, or Toby? For my money, the answer is yes, 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 no. Asmith, any additions there?
I mean, I think Kareev is the player to start. I think Kareev's going to do the best out of any of those, so I would go with Kareev and then followed by Munchkin.
Yeah.
Oh, should I sit Neko for these
Right,
players?
right. Start anybody over him.
I'm like,
to give you the answer the correct way, the way A. Smith did, it is very, very close for me between Munchkin and Kareev. Munchkin played phenomenally last week and then didn't really get the opportunity to like stand out and be that same guy this week. This week will be a huge week for knowing where Munchkin should be in his new role on the team as kind of like their locked and loaded starter in this DPS role. So Kareev is safer because he's been consistently a solid performer for fantasy in his new role. But you know, if you're playing against a difficult opponent, you can roll Munchkin. I think he's got the higher upside, the better chance to be the #1 overall scorer over Kareev, given how close his matchups are. Blevins, who would you start? Neko, Munchkin, Kareev, Dreamcasper, or Toby?
I'm just trying to see what Dreamcasper did. I mean, I don't know if I want Dreamcasper. I think I would start Neko over Dreamcasper. I would start Munchkin. I would start Kareev. And I think I start Neko over Dreamcasper and Toby. Yeah, I mean Toby, this meta, although I guess he had 184. I don't know. I still I think I would go with Neko over both Dreamcasper and Toby, but Kareev and Munchkin, I think you're picking them instead. Mm-hmm. So that's
it's definitely a tough conversation between the Dreamcasper on DPS and Neko on support. I think it could easily go either way. But moving along here, the last question is from Raykor, and he says Libero or Kareev. And let's start with Blevins since we already know his answer.
You don't, I don't think, because only because they're playing Shanghai this week, and while New York has generally sat SBB more so than Libero in this type of matchup, it's possible that they just want to give Libero a week off. I don't know. I mean, it could be something completely ungame related that they want to give one of their players a week off. I don't think that's likely, but I think if you need consistency here, I'd probably go with the Kareev pick. But I mean, under and basically any other week of the stage, I would pick Libero here.
Well, because I'm going to pick Libero, I'm going to go now, so that way A. Smith can break the tie afterwards. But listen, if we take the 3 maps that Libero missed against San Francisco and we give him the same point total he got in the one that we do have, he finished higher than Kareev this past week. So we've talked about how it's more likely to be Pine in for SBB than it would be for Libero, and I think for the time being I'm willing to bet on that a little bit. Listen, you're not gaining a bunch though, so I mean maybe at the end of the day you just kind of give that risk up and don't take it, but I think it's been long enough since we've seen Libero sit for Pine that I'm willing to assume if it happens, it's for SBB, and especially with they've been way less likely to bring Pine in this time around. And it's just things kind of line up for me. I've been very high on Libero since about halfway through stage 1. Like I wasn't sure a little bit, and it took him a little bit to get going, I think. But I've been kind of just. I mean, all you got to do is watch this team play to really get all in on them with a quickness. So I just. Am leaning on I want every piece of New York I can get in just about every circumstances. A. Smith, who you taking? Break our tie here.
I like Kareev here. I like Kareev because of the schedule they have. They are playing Florida and Boston, and I think those are going to be good wins for them, and I don't think Kariv's not. I think Kariv's going to play in all of them. They're going to continue to roll him out, especially with their new Korean coach. And I think the risk factor with Libero, I think Libero's hit or miss, and I think if Sabiolbi's playing, I think Sabiolbi has a chance to steal a lot of
kills,
steal the kills.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on it. So I go with Kariv.
Lucky for you, Raykor, good sir. You appear to have a win-win decision on your hands. I don't think you can really go wrong with either one of them. The consensus between us, though, Kariv may be a little bit safer.
It again, like most of these picks, it depends on the texture of your team. If you need a consistent point, I would go with Kariv. If you want to potentially spike it, but also could get like a random like 100 or like 85 week, like I would go Libero. But you could also have like 185 week.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think we're talking about, a solid top 10 DPS player, no matter how you slice it. So, but gentlemen, that wraps up the show for today. Anything to add here on the way out the door, Asmith? Anything for you?
Oh, it was fun. Just stop kicking on Dallas, okay, guys? Look, we know we suck. All our fans know we suck. Okay, you don't have to keep picking on us. Look,
no, you do.
We have to analyze them, and unfortunately, that involves kicking them at the moment.
I'm talking about the people who are rejoicing that Dallas.
Not us in particular, just the
No,
people,
yeah. I'm talking about people in general. Like people are saying that Dallas is losing. We know we suck, okay, guys? You don't have to keep like rubbing in people's faces. That's just being salty. That's just being mean-spirited in a little bit. I'm just saying.
Unless you're a Houston fan, then they're your rival, so you might want to
look. Yeah, that's.
I don't know. Are they? Well, maybe they are now. I mean, now that they're closer.
It's like the New York teams are rivals whenever they play each other in every sport, regardless of how they're doing. I mean, they're like next door neighbors, so you're always going to be rivals there a little bit. But
I have thick skin. I can take it. So no worries, guys. You're not offending me. I'm just saying I know people, snowflakes, that really would get offended.
All I'm saying is that whoever is on Around the Payload this week, every time you say soul, I'm just going to silently take away a point. So just keep that in mind. It's happening. Anytime anyone says soul or dynasty this week, they're getting a point taken away. So,
what if they say Shanghai Dynasty?
Then they get 5 points.
Okay, gain 5
and
points.
Also the title of the
Blitz. But Blevins just holds it. That's why you get points for it right now, because he's trying to lose the Blitz.
Right, I'm incentivizing the first person that says it gets 5 points, everyone else gets minus 10 or something.
Yeah, after that, it's bad. But listen, I thank you, everybody, for hanging with us and listening to the show today. Really, really appreciate it. Good luck in your Stage 2 Week 4 matchups. Can you believe we are 2 weeks away from stage playoffs?
I can't wait.
Not ready.
Ridiculousness. At least it'll be an extra day of matches now instead of like that Super Saturday situation. But everybody, you can follow us on Twitter at HNP_FOWL play. You can also join the Discord, where you can reach us in any of the fantasy text channels, anything like that. And as always, you can go over to highnoonpodcast.com to find links to everything I've been talking about all episode long. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next week.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.